I just want to introduce a couple of people and then we'll get started and go over a couple of things. But first and foremost, I want to thank Main Street, Sean Anker and her people and the ladies in the office for putting the food, the snacks and everything together. Also want to thank our city manager for helping with everything inside and out, bringing the chairs and all that stuff. Also would like to thank Mr. Roland Peterson, our Oklahoma State Senate, for coming today. Appreciate you having us. If Brian Larimore from the Cherokee First Baptist Church would come up right now and we'll say a prayer, then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll introduce our speaker.
Well, let's pray together, shall we? Father, we thank you first and foremost for your goodness to us and your kindness that you show us in your Son, Jesus. Father, we're thankful for opportunities like this to interact with folks that maybe we don't get to on a regular basis and can easily feel detached from. But God, we know that they carry an important role on behalf of all people. But God, we ask for your wisdom and for your kindness to fall as decisions are made at the State House and as representation is made. Father, as discussions are had here today, Lord, may you be honored and glorified. God, we're grateful that you provide these great United States with democracy, with freedom, with capitalism, but God, most of all, with opportunity to be a blessing. And so, Father, let this meeting be meaningful and purposeful, and then, God, may we walk out of this place encouraged about the future, knowing there's certainly difficulty to be faced. And Father, we pray for the team and the staff that are here and the tasks that they have. And God, let them see wisdom and truth and let them represent well. This all we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
We all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Y'all may be seated. I know my wife's going to kill me, but I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I'm a family man. It is my wife's 35th birthday back there. I'd like to introduce you, our U.S. Senator, Mr. Markwayne Mullin. Sorry.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We got to sing a birthday song.
We should.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't gonna come, but I
Way too late. I wasn't going to come on my birthday. My husband's supposed to introduce me. We know how that works.
Yeah.
Right? So this is really easy. It's simple. I don't sing, so I got to have your all's help on this one. But this is how it goes. It says, "This is your birthday song. It doesn't last too long. Hey." That's how we're going to sing this, right? Remember, this is your birthday song. It doesn't last too long. Hey, you guys help me with that one? I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
That's how. Right, ready? This is
Your birthday song. It doesn't last too long. Hey!
That's all the words I could memorize. So that's what I did with it. But I was 35 once too. I didn't have any grade. I only had 3 kids. How many kids you guys got? 3. Now we've collected 3 more since then. So everything in that.
Baseball teams.
I'm with you on that too. I tell my wife we should have a dozen more, and she says, "That's cute. You're gone in DC all the time. You get to come home, have fun, and I got this discipline when you're gone." Anyway, guys, thanks for being here. What a wonderful crowd, and thanks for the flags. I'm serious. That was so cool. I wish my wife was here to see that. She'd get a kick out of that. That's something that she always.
I'm a big person about flags. I actually have a 12 by 15 foot flag in my front yard.
Yay.
We always have a flag every house we're at. We have a big flag out there. Out there, when you pull up to the ranch, the first thing you see is the little flag pole out there, and the flag flying. It's something about it. It makes you feel good inside, doesn't it? Anyways, guys, thanks for being here. What I want to do today is introduce myself to some of y'all. Some of you guys know me. Some of you guys don't. Come on in. We already sung happy birthday. You know, it's the mayor's wife's 35th birthday. No, we already sung it. It's stupid. We already did that. Can we post that? We can post it. It's her 35th birthday. Do you not like birthdays?
I don't like attention.
You can tell. You know, because you don't like attention, you're like, I'm on you this whole day. All hour. I'm just going to be going, I'm going to be looking at you. I'm going to be trying to get your reaction off stuff. I don't like birthdays either. I tell people for my birthday, just don't call me. right? It's a day, I've gotta
Just
work,
leave me alone.
you know, it doesn't make any difference, so it's just a day, I just wanna go, my phone rings enough, I don't need you to respond, say happy birthday, and then I have to respond by, oh, thank you, like I'm so excited about it. I'm really not, but you have to, because you gotta be polite. Anyways, guys, what I wanna do today is, one, I'm gonna introduce a little bit about myself. Most of you, some of you guys know me, some of you guys don't, but just gonna tell you a little bit about myself. And then what's happened with the appropriation process and how it differs between the way we do it in the state and the way we do it in the House. And I want to open up for questions. And you guys ask me anything and everything. You guys want to ask me political questions, you can ask me political questions. You want to ask me something about my wife and my kids or something like that, great, let's talk about it. I can talk about them all day long. But this is your all's meeting. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Westville, which is the first town west of Arkansas. That's why it's called Westville. My family has been in Oklahoma since the 1830s. We came over, I'm Cherokee, and so we came over what they call, historically they call it the volunteer walk. It was part of the Trail of Tears, but there was two walks. There was a volunteer walk, what they call, and then the forced march. My family settled there. We've been running cattle in that place ever since. You know, over the years, it would grow, then it would shrink, and it would grow. By the time I was a kid, it had shrunk down to 250 acres. Since then, my wife and I have bought a lot of the sections back. We've grown it to this thing that we think we're gonna actually be able to make money one day running cattle. We've been thinking that we're gonna do that, and I decided I actually can make money running cattle as long as I own the land and then I don't try to pay for it with the cattle. You guys know what I'm talking about? So I'm kind of justifying it. So I own land, so I have Mullin Properties, and Mullin Ranch owns the cattle on top of it. So Mullin Properties is going in the hole, but the ranch is doing good. So I try to justify what we do. I've been married to my wife for 27 years. We were actually boyfriend and girlfriend in third grade. I actually got in trouble in third grade because I passed her a note and asked her, true story, asked her if she wanted to make babies. Not my proudest moment. I was raised in a Pentecostal church, and the deacon's wife was the teacher, and got the note. I was the youngest of 7, raised on a ranch. I probably didn't know more than what I needed to know. But I tell people that I don't know what she checked because the note got taken away. But I believe she said yes because we have 6 kids now. So we've been married for 27 years. We have three kids that came natural and 3 that I say we chose. So you pick out which ones we love the most. Because 3 I got stuck with and 3 I got to pick out. So we have 3 adopted and 3 biological. We had our first kid 7 years after we were married. We went through a little bit of trouble, fertility issues. Wasn't from a lack of trying. It just the Lord's timing we wasn't on His timing yet. We had our bookends are adopted. So Jace, who is our oldest, he turns 21 in about 22 days. He wrestles at Oklahoma State. We was fortunate enough to bring him in the house at 14 when he was 14 years old. And then Jim is our oldest biological son, and he also wrestles at Oklahoma State. They're 6 months apart. And then Andrew, who is honestly he was the best kid. Like, he was a kid that everybody really liked. We loved him, and he chose to go wrestle at OU.
Oh,
And
no.
so I know we're praying for him still, but he says that OU's like his mission field, I guess. I don't know.
Oh.
We're working on him. He's being just about every once. And so our 3 oldest are boys, and then we have Lara, who was a complete surprise. Doctor said we couldn't have any more kids. My wife was actually going in for a pre-op for a hysterectomy, and said she had to do a pregnancy test, and well, then we have Lara.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
some days I really thank the Lord on that one, and some days I really pray about that one. So, no, Lara's awesome. She's 16, and then our bookends are our last 2 of the bookends is our twins. We were blessed enough to adopt them when they were 2, and now they're 13, going on 28. And they're just beautiful girls that know everything, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm serious. They are so smart. I mean, it's obvious they don't have any my blood in them because they are truly intelligent kids, and so we're just blessed. I tell people I'm blessed to be a father. I'm very blessed to have a wife who puts up with me for 27 years, because I would have divorced me a long time ago if I was her. And I'm not kidding by that. There's zero chance I would have stayed with myself. And then I try to be a Christian, and I mean that sincerely. I was raised Pentecostal holiness. I didn't get saved until I was 20, because I went to church out of respect for my parents. Even though I was living by myself at 15, I still went to church on Sunday mornings and Sunday nights. And when I moved out, I didn't go on Wednesday nights like I probably should have, but there was a reason why, because I wasn't living for the Lord. That was probably the best reason. But at 20 years old, after I got married, I decided I didn't want to live that way, and so I gave my heart to the Lord, and I've been less than perfect ever since, but somehow I still try, and somehow I still find favor in Him. And so that's who I am. Now, on the political side of it, listen, I got in politics because I got fed up like with you guys, or you all wouldn't be here. We had a company that was operating across the country. It was an environmental company. EPA shut it down one day in April, and in 5 days, we had a company that was operating all across the country because of some faceless bureaucrat, and to change the regulation, we found ourselves having to close that business and change a lot of people's lives and workforce. And I say that because that's the biggest threat we have still to this day, right? Some faceless bureaucrat can make decisions that dictates our livelihood. And we have a saying in our family, you're never gonna change anything we're willing to tolerate. Meaning that don't come and gripe to me about something that you're not willing to get involved in. All right, if you see a problem, it's up to you to fix it. And if you don't wanna fix it, then don't complain about it. Because somebody else is trying to fix it. You may not like the way they're fixing it, but let us say I'm not a good Monday morning quarterback. I never coached high school football. I'm not gonna sit there and try to tell the coach how to do his job, because I've never done it. And for me, I don't get involved in things unless I'm gonna get involved in them. There's only one way to do it. So my first political event I ever went to in my life is when I stood up and said I was running for Congress. And that's what led me to here today. When I get there though, it's still frustrating. Because Congress just, as a whole, regardless if you're in what chamber, I don't care if you're in the House or the Senate, it just doesn't move like you want it to move. It doesn't make any sense. We look from the outside in, and the first thing you say is, why can't you all just get along? I mean, you're fighting for the country, why can't you just get along? And I remind people that our founding fathers didn't want us to get along. I mean that sincerely. If they wanted to get us along, then they would set a qualification of a certain person that had to be elected other than just age and a U.S. citizen. They would say that you gotta be from this bloodline, or you had to have this royalty in you, or you had to have certain type of education before you get there. They would have this class of individual they want to be there, but they wanted us to be representatives of our state that we came from. And so we all make decisions based on two things, right? The way we're raised and our life experiences. And so we've all been raised different. We all have different life experiences. And so you get that many people together in Congress, and that's just in the House of Representatives, there's going to be differences of opinions. Big difference of opinions. And then when you get in the Senate, there's going to be even more difference of opinions. And then the checks and balances that our founding fathers set up wanted it to be hard to do anything. Because if they wanted it to be easy, they would have just had one check and one balance put in place. They would require two separate chambers out of the same Congress to sign off on something, and then the President of the United States to sign off on it and give them the veto authority. They wanted us to move slow. And so, by design, we're not really supposed to get along, but we should be focused on what's best for this country. But because of the media cycles that we have, we get led astray constantly. And what I mean by that is, let's just talk about what's going to be happening in September. In September, we're going to get there, and we're going to be dealing with the budget. Because we had 12 appropriation bills that we're supposed to pass. And we haven't passed one of them out of the Senate yet. The House has passed 4 or 5 of them. We haven't done one of them yet in the House, in the Senate. And yet, our fiscal year ends September 30th. So October 1st, we start a new fiscal year. So we got to have everything funded. All right, am I sounding that bad? Thank you. So gentle. Caleb's our state director, by the way, and so he takes care of me. I keep people taller around me so they can see things. In our family, we're kind of vertically challenged. So, but anyways, you take the way we do our budget versus the state, right? The state handles things quite different than we do, which is also why they run a surplus, and they actually have a better than a balanced budget. Well, you guys right now are only spending roughly 10% or 90% of what comes in. Is that right? You guys You guys aren't even spending everything that comes in the treasury. We're spending everything plus $1.6 trillion. And you guys do line item appropriations, so you guys appropriate literally every single penny that goes to every agency and they're accountable for it. Is that correct?
Kind of.
Well, you guys do, so you do up to eight, I think what McCall told me is that you guys do up to 80%, and then there's 20% cushion, but then they have to come back at the end of every year and tell you how they spent the 20%.
Some of the money goes directly, that we don't get it appropriated.
Yeah.
That's Carl and I been elected, that we've changed that some.
Yeah.
We appropriate.
Some are directly appropriated, and we don't get to touch those.
But you guys, but the majority of it, you guys do line item appropriations for, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, and I bring that up because it's quite different. So you have a lot of people that's gonna be complaining this next month about, our debt, right? We have $35 trillion in debt. People are gonna be complaining about our deficit, $1.6 trillion. I'm using rough numbers here. We're running a deficit spending. And they'll complain about, and they'll tell you why they're not voting for the 12 appropriation bills, and they'll be all upset by it, and they'll be screaming and yelling and saying that we gotta balance the budget. But what they're not actually telling you is that 72% of our government's on automatic pilot. So 72% of it, we don't even touch. We don't vote on it, period. We have mandatory spending and discretionary spending. Mandatory spending is automatically, we don't vote on it, it automatically gets funded. It goes into the treasurer, out, back out the door. So we only vote on actually 28% of the budget. How are you ever gonna balance a budget if you're only voting on 28% of it? How are you actually gonna balance it if you're actually only have control over 28% of it? It's not gonna happen. But if you take those 12 appropriation bills, and you break one of them out, the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, then, which no one wants to cut spending on defense right now. I mean, I'd hope you wouldn't, because we're in a very, very scary world right now, and we're behind our adversary in China in a lot of different areas. And so we need to be investing big in that. But if you put that back into it, and you say, now we're just gonna vote on 11 appropriation bills, if you add the NDA on it, it puts us up to almost 89%. So you're gonna balance the budget off 11 appropriation bills that accounts for 11% of our budget. Guys, you could take all 12 appropriation bills, including the NDA, and not do a single thing, zero amount, and all we'd be able to do is just maintain our spending levels right now in 72%, plus pay interest on our current debt. Our debt payment right now is roughly $900 billion a year, and it'll fluctuate depending on the interest rate, depending on our spending habits. But I'm just using a round number there of $900 billion. We're already spending $820 to $840, depending on where the final number comes in on defense. We're spending more on servicing our national debt than we are on defense right now. So if we didn't appropriate one single penny on the 12 appropriation bills you guys are going to be hearing about, we wouldn't pay down one penny on our debt. Not a penny. Guys, that's scary. How do we fix that? Well, we gotta get into the 72%, the mandatory spending, but here's the problem with the 72%. What do you think the majority of the 72% is?
Social Security.
Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. So for Republicans, if Republicans take control of the Senate and take control of the House and we take control of the White House, do you think we're gonna do that? No. It'll be a bloodbath on the midterm elections. Because the Democrats are accusing us of doing everything underneath the sun to everybody out there that depends on that. All the individuals that are getting Social Security checks, that are on disability, that they require Medicaid reimbursements, or Medicaid, and how we're gonna bankrupt states because they're not gonna get the reimbursement rates, and we're gonna kick all these thousands and thousands of people off their insurance. So Republicans aren't gonna do that. By the way, if the Democrats were in control and they did it, we Republicans would probably tell them the same thing. We'd probably do the exact same thing to them, because we're gonna be looking at winning an election. And so the only way you're gonna actually get that done if you have a divided government. It means you're gonna have to have a president that actually makes it a priority, and be it a Republican president or a Democrat president, and it wants to work with the Congresses from a different party. That way we're all involved in it, because it's gonna be forced on us. Right now, if we continue the rate we're going, it's gonna be insolvent by 2028. Does that mean that those that have Social Security checks coming in that receive Medicare benefits, that means benefits are gonna stop? No, that doesn't mean that. What that means is we're gonna have to start putting money into it. But we're gonna have to reform it at some point. And one of the easiest reforms is to kick people off that shouldn't be there. Because Social Security has been a Social Security catch-all, Social Security disability. You know, I have anxiety. I've got it. I've got a backache. I've got a headache. I can't work. So they put you on Social Security disability. Last time I checked, if you paid into it, you had it coming. So if you didn't pay into it, you shouldn't have it coming. Now, if you pay into it, you have medical issues, no problem. If you need social security disability, no issues. It's there. That's what it was for. But we got a bunch of people that's not even on there, and one of the biggest groups of people that's caused it to go bankrupt the fastest, because it was supposed to be insolvent around 2035, but now its numbers have increased, is because we have 10.2 million illegals that's come over here that are not eligible for benefits. Oh, how are they eligible? They're illegal. Well, no, they actually have legal status here in the United States now. The reason why they have legal status is because they got parole. Because when they came across the border, they claimed asylum. When they claimed asylum, 85% was parole within 24 hours, and the next 90, or another 90, or the other, or up to 94% was parole within 36 hours. So you have 10.2 million people that are here that they weren't given work visas on. Now, some of them are applying, some of them are trying to get a work visa, but the majority doesn't have a work visa. Well over 90% of them don't have a work visa. So how are they making a living? How are they doing it? Well, there are some problems, essentially, because they're wards of the state being the United States. So they're eligible for these programs, and if you think about how many people we put into Social Security, and that's pulling off Medicaid now, that we're having to reimburse the states for, that's 2.5 times the population of the state of Oklahoma. That's more than the population of Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, combined. Combined. And yet it's become political, and we're not willing to make a reform to it. But if we don't do that, there's zero chance we can ever balance our budget. If we don't get into the mandatory spending of it, we can't do it. And it really isn't that hard. If you didn't pay into it, you don't have it coming. Now, if we want to put those individuals someplace else, then that's up to you guys, the taxpayers, to decide if we want to pay for them to do something else. But should they be in a program that so many people depend on that actually do what they're supposed to do? Absolutely not. But that's political, right? And then we get into the mandatory or the discretionary spending. How do we actually fund that money? How do we actually decide where that dollar's going to go? Anybody know? As we talked about, you guys do line item appropriations, right? And line item appropriations, by the way, has been political for federal, because line item appropriations, another name for that is called earmarks. Now, how many of you guys think earmarks is a good thing? I know you're raising your hand because you know where I'm going with this, but I mean, most people, if you say earmarks, you guys think of the bridge to nowhere. You think of something like that. You think of corrupt Congress, right? That's how they're doing it. And so we got rid of earmarks, where we can't do earmarks. But if you can't do earmarks, then how can you actually appropriate dollars? Because if you're not actually appropriating, who's making the decision on how the money is being spent? Because the money's being spent. So who makes that decision? Bureaucrats are. And who's appointed over the head of the agencies? The director or the secretary? And who's that director or secretary appointed by?
President.
Huh?
President.
The president. So what Congress does is Congress has, since we got rid of line item appropriations, which I like to use the word, actually it's what I call line item appropriations. The public will call it, because the news media will call it earmarks. But since we got rid of it, all we do is actually bundle money. And we put it to the agency. They tell us what their budget needs to be. They don't tell us necessarily how they're going to spend it, but they kind of do top lines on how they're going to spend it. And then we give it to them. And once we give it to them, the director or the secretary that is appointed by the president of the United States actually decides. And so how does Congress control the purse strings at that time? We're not. We're not. And how can you ever get control of spending if you're not actually appropriating the dollars? That's like me having one of my companies that I just give them just a blank check and say, this is your budget for the year, and one of the persons there thinks it's a great idea to put pink roses on everybody's desk fresh every morning. That's not helping anything. That's not creating any revenue. That's just a waste of money. So much money are we wasting inside these agencies because we're not appropriating them. We're not accountable for any pennies at all, because we allow politics to get in the way of actually sound policy. If we're actually going to bring it back, we actually have to start doing line item appropriations again. We actually have to appropriate every dollar, because if you're not counting the pennies, you're never going to count the dollars. You never count the dollars, you're never going to count the hundreds. If you never count the hundreds, you're never going to count the thousands. If you're never going to count thousands, you're never going to count the millions. If you're never going to count the millions, you're never going to count the billions. If you don't count the billions, in this case, you're never going to count the trillions. It's impossible to get it under control. There's a reason why the state of Oklahoma is running a surplus. There's a reason why they're not spending every single penny that comes in. It's because they actually do their job. They're actually accountable for it. We've absolutely 100% delegated all the authority away from Congress. And so all these people that you hear up there talking about the national debt, talking about balancing the budget, telling them why they can't vote for this and why they can't vote for that, are they actually telling you what it is has to be done? Because they're complaining about something that they're not actually willing to do. That's the same thing, and I go back to what I said before. I'm not gonna sit here and complain about something I'm not willing to do myself. I'm not gonna do that. But I went out there to make a change because I got frustrated. I didn't need this job. This is something I get to do. It's an honor to do. I love it. I truly do. I do love the opportunity you guys gave me to do. But we gotta make some serious changes, and that means we gotta have some serious conversations. Because the opinion of earmarks, for most of you guys, have probably changed now when you already start thinking about it, about line item appropriations, and understand that's what the state does every season, or every session. And yet Congress, we haven't done it since '96. We literally, since Newt Gingrich had a new deal with America, and we got rid of all that stuff, we haven't ever been able to actually appropriate ever since. We're simply bundlers. And what's happened to our national debt? Skyrocketed. Because there's almost no accountability. Now, all these guys, the same people that are out there saying, we need to do this, we need to do that, and they're gonna be on national TV talking about why they don't vote for this and why they don't vote for that, they're gonna be the same people getting mad at agencies too, but they also know that the agencies aren't accountable to us. Because how we made the agencies accountable to us, is we control the purse strings. Now, since we write bills that are so ambiguous that we really don't tell them how to spend it, they're not accountable to us, and the courts have ruled in their favor too. Because since we're not appropriating the dollars to them and telling them exactly how to spend it, we give them the ability to spend it however they want. It drives me absolutely nuts. So I just feed that to you because I thought you need to know about it, because it's gonna be such a hot topic come November, because they're gonna say, we're gonna go, or not November, come September, because they're gonna say we're gonna go to shutdown and all this stuff. And if you guys start listening to news, how are you guys gonna actually know the truth? I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can find it unless someone comes out and explains it to you. So I do appreciate y'all being here. With that, I'm gonna stop. And now you guys ask me whatever you want to. It's conversation yours. Yes, ma'am.
I am both a fiscal and social conservative. In reviewing your votes in the Senate, it's a little scary. Are you aware of the Freedom Index? JBS pronounced? Okay.
You know, they score stuff.
Yeah, but they give you in advance, right, what they're gonna be scored on, correct?
Yeah, so, and here's how these scorecards, we call them scorecards. Here are these scorecards work. They pick and choose what they're gonna vote on and what they're not gonna score.
Right, and they're constitutional issues.
Not always. They're more political issues. It's broad issues for what they want to score. Because if you're everything we vote on should be constitutional, right? Because either it's constitutional or it's not.
Right.
So here's my deal on these scorecards. Either you score every single vote or don't score at all. Because if you pick and choose, what you're telling me is actually, if you don't vote with me, then I'm gonna score against you, so you're actually trying to control my card. You guys are the people that control my card. No one else is gonna tell me how to vote. And so these scorecards like this, like these freedom scorecards and stuff, ask them why don't they score every vote? Because every vote should be constitutional. Every single vote is either
It should
constitutional or
be,
it's not.
but it isn't always.
Right.
And if and it's not just right and left. I think most of us would agree it's good and evil. And if you vote with Durbin and Schumer and the left that are all voting in lockstep on appropriation things, on like who declares war, it's supposed to be, Congress. If you vote with the left, then you're not on the right side of the line. And it's really important, because you took an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution. And I'm sure you were really serious about that when you raised your arm up to do that, put your hand on the Bible, right?
Sure.
So I want, as one of your constituents, and not just a constituent, I'm one who will donate, and I will knock, and I will walk, and I did in multiple counties. And I do in every election cycle, because it's important. My country's super important to me, and I'm sure to everyone here, or we wouldn't be here. But I don't want anybody that has an R by their name to be voting with the left, because they don't ever vote to strengthen America. They vote to give money to go where they want it to go. And if we get, the devil never reaches across the aisle. He never does. But we're expected to do that. As Republicans, you gotta reach across the aisle, but if they get in control, they'll lock you Republicans right out of the meetings, and they'll do it. And so, I don't wanna see anybody with an R by their name that's voting with the left, because they are not for the good of our country, and they do not support the Constitution.
Right.
And so, any of these appropriations for things that are not in our in the Constitution, you know, we don't need the Department of Education and all these different, the Department of Transportation and Housing and Urban Development, we don't need that. It's not part of what our founders put in place. I would really love to be able to go and knock on doors and support you financially and all that next time your election cycle comes up. But if I can't see you vote in the Constitution, then I can't do that in good conscience.
So tell me what I've done that's unconstitutional.
Okay. Anything, like I said, anything.
Let's just break it
HR
down. Well, let's break it down
58.
then. Let's break down the Department of Transportation and the Department of Labor, okay? Department of Transportation, why do you think they exist? It's not in the Constitution, but we are a government, what? For the people, by the people, right? Almost every one of these agencies was designed because the people wanted it. Because they wanted transportation. They wanted to be able to travel. So we asked them, the people, we asked them to stand it up. You asked us to get rid of them, we'll get rid of them. But it still takes a vote of we the people, by the people to do that. So it takes Congress to vote them out, which I don't control Congress. I get the choice, and no choice is perfect. There is not one single perfect bill that's ever been done, and there's never been anything that's ever been perfect done in Congress. If that was perfect, then we wouldn't have amended the Constitution the way we had. So I get a choice. I either get a choice A or B. And my way I handle this is the same way I do in business. I go on a negotiating deal, I want 110%. But I'll negotiate down to 69%. I'll walk away there. I'll accept 70%, right? Now, if you tell me you don't ever want me to vote with a Democrat, I'm not your person. Because I also believe in negotiating. And people are gonna be different, and I don't have a choice. Right now, I don't have a choice. No isn't okay, because if I vote no, we'll make no changes at all to the government, and changes do need to happen. So if I just vote no constantly, then we make no changes and we only give the authority back to them. I believe in working people. I've hired hundreds, not I've hired thousands of people. Never asked one single person how they were elected or how they registered to vote. I hired the best person. Best person for the job. I hire on the sense of responsibility. Now, there's some Democrats you can't trust. It's true. There's some you can't. Tulsi Gabbard, who now President Trump has appointed to be part of the transition team, when she was a Democrat, her and I are very close friends. Very close. In fact, she'll call me her brother, and I'll call her sister. Or I'll call her my sister. When she's over the Oklahoma Reserve Unit right now, when she comes into the state, she stays at our house. Her and her husband both. My wife and I's house. She was a Democrat, saying I should have never worked for her when she was over there. About Kirsten Sinema. Who Kirsten Sinema has voted with us just as many times as she's voted with the Democrats, and she actually stopped a lot of the overreaching things, and she was a registered Democrat forever. And guess what? I worked with her in the Senate, and I worked with her also in the House. What about Joe Kennedy? Now, Joe Kennedy's pretty far Democrat, but I still worked with him all the time. And Josh Guttenheimer, Democrat on the House side, New Jersey, worked with him occasionally, because I have to. You have to. You can't just say you don't ever vote with an R or you don't ever vote with a D. You have to negotiate with people. There's business people that you do business with every day that you may not agree with, but you still got to work for some type of compromise. Now, that's just the way I am. And so if you don't ever want me to vote with any Democrat, I'm not your person. I'm just not. But if you want me to go up and try to get things done because we don't believe the country's headed in the right direction, I am your person. I may not get a home run every single time. I may not throw a touchdown every single time. But I'm going to constantly be moving forward and doing what I think is best. These agencies were fighting because the people wanted to stand it up. If you talk about your state highways, a lot of that funding comes from federal government. You want to start talking about the Department of Education? Some of that funding comes from the Department of Education, from federal government. You want to start talking about our National Guard? Almost 100% of that funding comes from the federal government. So if we don't want that, then the state's going to have to pick up where we left off. Because those agencies are being funded by the federal government. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong.
So we have to make a decision on what we want. Now, I don't like these agencies either. I think that we need to put more of it in the states. It'll go farther if we put it down in the states. But they were created because the people complained about something, they wanted it fixed. That's how all this stuff has got started to begin with. I'm dead set on rolling back all this bureaucratic red tape and put it back in the state's hands. But just simply not voting for any of it When you know something's gonna be done, I'd rather be involved in the decision-making and slowly cut them out, because they're just not gonna disappear all at once. We can slowly give it back to the states, slowly start giving it back to the states, slowly weaning ourselves off of it. It's just like the federal government overreaches anyways. Statistically speaking, if I ask people in here, and I don't ask you for your show of hands, but statistically speaking, 50% of the country's population is involved in some type of government aid. 50%, statistically speaking. Now you go, well, I'm not one of them. Maybe you're not. But the business you work with that's paying your paycheck maybe is. Maybe they have a federal contract. Maybe they got an SBA loan. Your farm. Some of the stuff you get with your farm aid. Because of crop insurance. Because of disasters that come up, and we claim we have FEMA come in and pay for some of it. I mean, you think about this. You think about all these federal programs that you say aren't constitutional, but they're actually not non-constitutional. It's ambiguous. The Constitution actually doesn't say we shall not do this. It says we're a government for the people, by the people, and the people want it. So I bring that all up because, ma'am, I get your opinion and I share it with you, but I'm also elected to do a job, and I'm doing my best job I can, and I don't get to choose who I work with. We don't have a vote on that. We don't elect those individuals. I just get to choose where I'm at.
But we don't have the luxury of time. We're about to lose our standing. The dollar is gonna be losing our standing as an international coin. We don't have the luxury to slowly do this.
Right.
And the states' rights are most important to our founders.
Yeah.
I had 9 ancestors on the Mayflower. We fought in the Revolution. This is really, really important to see our country destroyed out from underneath us. We have to give it back to the people because it's being destroyed by the federal government.
Don't disagree
Slowly
with you.
isn't gonna do it. It's just not gonna do it.
The government's designed to work slow, and we didn't get here overnight, and you're not gonna fix it overnight. It's just the way it is. I'm sorry. We are designed to work slow, and I don't disagree with you. I share your frustration, ma'am, as much as anybody. Everybody in this room probably shares your same frustration. We all agree. We just have different ideas on how to get there, and it's unrealistic to think we're gonna fix it overnight. I would love to fix it overnight. In a business, I could go in there and I could fix stuff like this, just like this. Our founding fathers set us up to work slow. They didn't want to have fast decisions and make fast decisions like this. It's kind of like what I said about getting along. Our founding fathers set us up to not get along. It's the same thing. They wanted government to work slow. We didn't just wake up one day and get $35 billion or $35 trillion in debt. And so the idea of being able to fix it, even in the first 4 years of President Trump was in office, that's not realistic. Even if he gets 4 more years, it's not realistic. But we can start moving in the right direction, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get us moving in the right direction. And I work every single day to do that. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong about your frustration, ma'am. You have every right to be frustrated. As I said, I ran because I was fed up, and I share that. But it's also unrealistic for you to ask me to not ever vote with a Democrat too. So I just can't say that. I'm never gonna commit to that because I don't know what the options are. I just don't. So I appreciate it, and I do appreciate your passion. I appreciate your involvement. We can't get, it takes people of everybody to get me where I'm at right now. It does. But one thing to always know is where I stand, and you'll know my opinion on it. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me. I've been married to my wife 27 years, and I promise you I've apologized to her a lot. Because I bet she doesn't agree with every decision either. And in fact, sometimes she just sends me text messages and says, really? And I send her back and says, you're the one who married me. I mean, who's the crazy one here? I mean, she chose me. I didn't. So she knew what she was getting. And I say the same thing. I'm kind of funny on that one, but I mean it. It's not from a lack of trying.
So
I'm just not the only one. Yes, ma'am.
So in the news, there's been a little bit of talk about President Trump talking about getting rid of the Department of Education, and I don't believe that that's what his true intention is. It's a scaling back.
Yeah.
Are you of that same inclination
Absolutely.
that you believe that a lot of these industries need to be scaled back, and then the money that would be normally allocated to them would then be allocated to the states? Because I think there's been statements where he has said, let the states take care of the
Yeah.
education. Just let's put more dollars to the state control to funnel down to the local school district levels and how they see fit, and
Yeah.
to put the state's priorities as opposed to the federal Department of Education priorities. Are you of that same like mind?
We need to put her up for the communication director for President Trump, because yes, if you actually listen to what President Trump said, he says he wants to get the dollar closer to the source.
Right.
That's what he wants to do. So that's why when he was in office last time, he did 20, for every one regulation that came in, he kicked out 22 regulations. Because if you can take the federal dollar, the federal requirements out of it, the dollar bill will go twice, if not 3 times further.
Yeah.
I use this example all the time. When our companies were bidding federal contracts, which I can't bid them anymore, but when our company was bidding federal contracts, we would double it. Not because we're trying to take advantage of it, we're just trying to make money, because there's so many things that, like prevailing wages, or so many other red tapes that you gotta deal, because you have different trades, you have different, requirements, you have different permits you gotta deal with, you have all these different issues you gotta deal with when you're dealing with federal contracts, that it's just so much more expensive. So if you listen to him, he wants to put the dollar closer, so that means you don't need 2 square blocks for the Department of Ag, right? You don't need to control a 7-story building for the Department of Education. They're not teaching a single kid.
Right.
It needs to be closer to the source, and that was his whole point, is there may be a reason to have a Department of Education. There may be a reason to have a Department of Ag. There may be. Because someone has to set that standard. Because it does talk about that there's gonna be a standard, right? There's gonna be something. Someone has to set that standard, something. Now, I believe Congress could do that all day long. I think we could do it if we did our job, if we didn't delegate the authority away. But that dollar needs to go closer. Or I tell people all the time, the Department of Education didn't start in Washington, D.C. It started because people wanted to use the church building to start educating their kids. I think it's worked for a long time. It's been fine. But there's some of this stuff that we need to look at. It's not working the way that it should be, so let's figure out how to get it all closer. Let's quit gathering those dollars in DC and push them back to the classrooms. And if that's just the Department of Education, we can talk about it with every department.
I will say, in my experience as the county assessor, a lot of people come in and are very upset with property taxes, which is a natural frustration, and I want to always empathize with them in that. But I always look across the desk and say, the one thing I do like about property tax is that you can look the person who is spending that dollar in the eye, because we're all local, and local government being closer to the people, you can look your superintendents in the eye and say, why did you buy XYZ? Same with our local county government, and I feel like we're really blessed in that people understand. But I do like that when tax dollars are local, they're spent local.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm very passionate about too, is having that accountability closer to the people that elect those local representatives.
I don't disagree. That's why we need to put it all closer back, so thank you. Yeah. What else we got, guys? Yes. Oh, Pam, I'll get to you in just a second. I'll get this guy on, I see your hand. Yes. Go ahead, sir.
I'm here to thank you.
Well, thank you.
You probably saved my life. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'm able to reboot the Constitution. If I had your job, which I could have had, because I ran at the same time you did, you went to Washington. I stayed here. If I had your job, if I was in your shoes, sitting in Washington as a senator, I would have to look at what's happened. Since you've been there, we've started 2 wars. The Senate could have stopped this, but instead we just keep pouring more and more of our tax dollars into Ukraine. You have to admit that. The other thing is, we've got this god-awful slaughter of the people in Palestine. This has all happened underneath the time you've been there. If I'd had that job, I would have blown my brains out. I cannot imagine what's happening in Washington right now. She's right here. Things are going to change real soon, I think. But I want to help you, and I think that you're going to have to take a broader look at things, because you've got a bunch of kids to bring up. There's not going to be any America here. One of the things that's happening right in Oklahoma, And I ask you, how are you handling this deal in Oklahoma City, in Tinker? We're bringing 75-year-old airplanes in there, and you know what they're doing with them? Have you tried to?
I go to Tinker all the time, get free on Senator services, so I doubt it.
Well, let's tell the people what's happening there.
Well, tell me what you're referring to. There's a lot of stuff happening.
I'm an old man. I worked for Boeing in 1957 on these airplanes.
Mhm.
These airplanes are 70 years old, 75 years old.
We've got a lot of platforms that were flying during Vietnam and.
But you know why they're there?
Yeah.
Why are we bringing these planes back? When I worked there, we had just developed the hydrogen bomb. The B-52 at that time could carry 2 bombs, each one of them 6,000 pounds. And one of the planes that I worked on, the wings flew off, and you can check on this when you go back to Washington. But just south of Washington, D.C., and at this time I was in a missile silo in Cheyenne, Wyoming, with an Atlas missile. And the colonel called me in and he said, "You've got problems. I've given you a security clearance. What happened to you? Did you lose your mind?" And I said, "What happened?" He said, "You just had a plane that you signed off on the wings that crashed just a little ways from Washington, D.C. and dropped 2 hydrogen bombs." This is on the internet. You can find this out now, but this has been hidden from us. Each one of these bombs were 250 times more powerful than what we had just got through dropping on Hiroshima. Have you ever been to Hiroshima?
No.
You should go, because you'll kind of get a feeling of what can be. Right now, we've got these planes in there, and they're getting ready to put bombs on there that weigh probably 4 times as much as that, and if they drop one of them right here in Oklahoma, there wouldn't be a person living.
I'm gonna say you're wrong on that. I appreciate it.
But anyway, I'm just telling you, I mean, we've gotta wake up.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, you know.
But anyway,
discuss-
thank you for what you're doing. I mean, you're a great guy, and I'll probably vote for you again, because I know you look for things here, but
Yeah.
somehow we've gotta look outside of Oklahoma, what's happening.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate your comments. I respectfully disagree with what's happening in Tinker on that one. I won't go into details on that. It's, you know, there is some stuff happening, but we're not strapping bombs on 75-year-old planes right now. We're decommissioning those, and that's the whole issue we're having. We're actually decommissioning, we're bringing in new bombers, and we're trying to make sure that Tinker stays at Tinker, because we're having to transition to them. So we're aging out those old platforms and bringing in new platforms. Now, the problem is the transitions are faster, so we're actually aging out before we actually have the bombers in place, and it's causing us not to be able to be mission capable at this point. So that's what we're dealing with. As far as the 2 wars, I didn't start any of the wars, and neither did the United States. Hamas is the one that started the war in Israel, and Israel has the right to defend themselves. And for those people that live in Gaza, I get bad things happen in war. I've been there, smelt it, I hear it, I can still see it. Bad things happen. But the Palestinian people that lived in Gaza chose to live in Gaza because they want to live underneath the Palestinian war, underneath the Palestinian controlled government. They could have lived in the West Bank. The people in Gaza chose to have Hamas rule them. They made that decision. They chose to have a terrorist organization run them. They chose to allow the tunnels to be buried or be built underneath their feet. They chose that. They weren't stuck there. Gaza is not. It was not a ghetto where they couldn't leave. They could have left anytime they did. In fact, a lot of them did leave and went and worked every day outside of Gaza.
I'd like to point out that
my point is on this one is that Israel has the right to defend themselves, and I 100% respect them for that. What they do there, they didn't start this war, Hamas did. And innocent people do die in war, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, you go back to Ukraine, Ukrainian people in the United States didn't support that either. President Trump, that would never taken place. Putin decided to make that invasion.
but the Senate
Now,
is
now we have-
funding it.
Now, you're funding the majority of it, that's not true, but we also, how many of you guys have heard about the Budapest Memorandum? You guys know the Budapest Memorandum, anybody? Google it. Budapest Memorandum is our word. How many of you guys do believe that we should be a man of our word? Anybody think you should? We're only as good as the word, right? Budapest Memorandum, which was signed in 1994, said that if Ukraine were to give up their nuclear weapons, which at the time they were the second largest nuclear arsenal in the world, if they were to give up their nuclear weapons, the United States would protect them from invasion, specifically from Russia. Now, do you think if Ukraine had nuclear weapons today, Russia would have ever invaded them? No. But Ukraine decided they'd rather have the might and the word of the United States of America behind them. Now, I wasn't there in '94, I didn't sign that, but it was still part of the United States. They agreed to the Budapest Memorandum, we signed it, and they signed it. They gave us their nuclear arsenal. That didn't have an expiration date on it. I feel like we have a federal obligation to that. Now, you can read it for yourself. Like I said, Budapest Memorandum, Google it, it's out there for you. And you tell me what we should do with that.
And we know that the left has been money laundering in Ukraine for years. And we know that that money, the $116+ billion have gone there, are not specifically allocated to the military. We know the
Do you know
Zelensky is correct.
Do you know what the majority of that is actually spent on? Now I'm gonna get this question back here. The majority of it is actually replenishing our stock. We're not writing them a check. We're not writing them a check. Now, we do cover some of their payroll, but very little. Most of it is for munitions only. And we've given them our spent munition, spent stuff that we had in stock that we weren't actually gonna use. It was actually gonna be discharged. In fact, a lot of us came out of the McAllister Ammunition Depot. And if you go there at noon every single day, you'll hear a boom, boom, boom. That stuff that we were blowing up, boom, 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 because it was expired, we gave to Ukraine. Now we're replenishing of it. The last tranche of money we had, over 70% of it went to replenish our munitions. Not $1 of that went over there, the 70%. The rest of it was to help purchase more munitions for them from other countries to go over there.
Well,
So we're not giving them,
where's that money coming from?
we're not, it's coming from our
It's
taxpayers.
coming from us.
It's coming from our taxpayers. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that we have an obligation there. And I have a hard time walking away from obligations. I have a hard time doing it. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about Social Security.
Yes, ma'am.
That you were talking about before. And this may just be simplistic, I'm not seeing it correctly, but, you know, ever since after World War II, and I'm a baby boomer. So when everybody started having 13 kids, 14 kids, or whatever, you know, that population grew. And we were the Pepsi generation. I have always been, you know, the biggest part. We were the ones that, you know, made most of the changes in the United States the way it is now. We're the ones that were working to put into Social Security and a lot of the things. Okay, so I look around sometimes, and with this population, and I'm part of it, is aging. Why is it, this is the first part of the question, why is it that as we die off, and I hate to say that, but it happens, we have been like 70% of the population has been in that age group in the United States. So we are using it now, most of the Social Security, and I understand that. But as we die off, why does not the problem of Social Security kind of take care of itself when the biggest part of the population is no longer using it?
And that's a great question. When you guys were younger than me and my age, which is why you guys have worked all the way up until some of you guys are still working. I mean, my parents are 77 years old, and I mean, they would still be working if they were capable of working, you know. When you guys were working, we had over 80% of the population that was in the United States that was working age was actually in the workforce. Right now, you have roughly 49%.
49.
The federal government pays so many of these individuals to stay home. They look for an excuse not to work, and we give them an excuse not to work. Some of them can't work because they can make more money staying at home receiving government aid than they could if they go get that first job. But they've also chose a life of poverty when they do that. Because I mean, I can't tell you how many employees over the years couldn't take a raise when I was trying to give them a raise because they would lose this benefit or that benefit. And my whole point is, you can't take the raise to, let's say $15 an hour, because you're gonna lose a benefit, then how are you ever gonna get $17 an hour? Because with that raise probably comes more responsibility. And if you can't take that next step, you can't ever take that third step either. And so you're just gonna stay down there, and we have to look at the way we do those benefits. I'm not saying benefits are bad, some people need them. But I think that's why we should look at more state benefits than federal benefits, because states take care of it a little bit better.
Now, my question is that the biggest draw
Yes.
on social security is dying off in the
Right.
next 10 years. Why does that not take care of the problem? It's my
Well, it
understanding,
should,
my
but-
understanding that actually, you know, we kind of think that we worked and put it into social security, but it's always been the generation behind that was actually funding social security. And so now you don't have those people in the workforce, so you've got less people putting in,
Right.
more people draining. But if the people that are draining are not there anymore, why does that not fix it?
Well, because the majority of you guys are still there.
I'm just saying-
And mathematically it should, but we keep putting more people on it that hasn't paid into it. The problem is that there's a lot of people in it that should have never been put in it to begin with. If you never pay into it, you shouldn't get it. It's kinda like you shouldn't be getting a retirement that you didn't invest in. I mean, we all make decisions in life, and they all have consequences in life. And so if you look at the way Social Security ran, we need to relook at the whole system, because it's not working the way that it currently is. It's just not working. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you, appreciate it.
It's not working the way that it is right now, and the math would say that it should be working, because the people that die, the numbers are dying off, but we're actually adding more people faster than it's actually dying off.
But all those people haven't died off yet. My
No.
point is that within 10 years or so, if you're looking down the
Yeah.
line, they will be gone. So at that point, will it not be a whole different?
I don't know, because if we don't put more people paying into it, then no. We're gonna continue this upside down. We continue to put more and more people in that should not ever been put in to begin with. Social Security should be left alone and not a catch-all, and we've used it for a catch-all. So yes, what you're saying does make sense, but our numbers aren't showing, are not showing that it's gonna happen.
And it's taxed 3 times. The employer, the employee, and then you get taxed on it again when you receive it. That should not be.
I'm not arguing with that one. Yes?
I have an issue with the green energy, coming in. So, as my experience, I've seen some major changes with oil and gas and with the wind industry in the state of Oklahoma. We had a wind case out of Kingfisher County actually go to the state Supreme Court, and the wind company actually proved in that court case that they actually don't make money because of the expense of putting up a wind farm, and what the energy that they actually sell pretty much balances itself. The only way a wind farm actually makes any money is government subsidies.
Agreed.
So we've come up with a term of farming the government. So anytime you have a wind farm CEO or anybody who's got a nice house or anything, it's our tax dollars that have paid for that. So I have a problem with the green energy because it also takes so much petroleum products to put up a wind farm, to build those blades and things like that. But yet the everyday average person is priced out of gas. Our gas prices have gone up so much. So it's almost become a situation where we want the petroleum products so that we can build companies, so we can make millionaires on government subsidies, because these companies aren't actually paying for themselves. And those financial documents actually came through in a state Supreme Court where I've actually been able to see that. The other problem that I have is our oil and gas pipelines. I've got a case that's hitting Alfalfa County extremely hard. If you look at the map of the pipelines in Oklahoma, they are central right up here in northwest Oklahoma. And I have a company that's a public service company, which means it spans multiple states, all the way up to Iowa. And the Oklahoma Tax Commission values that pipeline, and then they reallocate it to the counties where that pipeline is located. So I have an 11-year-old pipeline in Alfalfa County that from one year to the next, we lost $8 million in net assessed value, which was 1/5 of the entire school district's value, with that public service being revalued. So I went to the state auditor, Cindy Berg. Mr. Peterson helped get me a meeting there. she said, well, let's look into this. So the tax commission looked into it, they called for an audit of that pipeline company, and pretty much the answer was federal export tariff rates had increased so substantially when export contracts were being expired, that when they were renegotiated, the company was allowed a federal write-off in the value of that company. So that company wrote off blue sky value. That value got reallocated to multiple states, and then it got reallocated down to our local people, our local schools. So Burlington School District in particular has seen a dramatic, and that's what, at the end of the day, as representatives, you're serving a purpose for multiple people. I am too. Anybody who serves on a city council, serves in the military, any kind of public service, we're serving multiple people. But I think that we lose track sometimes at how far up things go and the decisions that are made on different levels and how they affect the everyday life of, whether it's the petroleum rates that we pay at the pumps, or whether it's the school system that is educating our kids and paying for librarians and reading interventionists. But it amazes me that I was able to find the answer that tariff rates is what impacted our local schools.
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm sure you're right, but I haven't seen it. We'll look into it, but it wouldn't be legislation.
No, it's not legislation.
There's no legislation that we passed on that, and I only deal with legislation.
I know.
And so I don't know, but I think it's worth us looking into, so we'll look into it.
Well, I definitely had the state auditor look into it,
Yeah.
and so I don't know anybody higher up that I can go to, and she has pretty much said, we're stuck.
I'm friends with Cindy, so I'll call her and I'll
She
ask
knows
her about it too, so let's reach out and see what it is, cause I absolutely caught the toe off guard, I have no idea.
I know you don't, but it is happening.
I don't disagree with that, yeah, yes, sir.
You know, Senator, I just want to take advantage of an opportunity to thank you. I've had the opportunity, about 30 years of my life, I have worked through and with our rural and farm organizations. Been in Washington DC multiple times, been in your office multiple times.
Yeah.
And I want to compliment you on the respect that you have earned with both sides of the aisle. And there are times that we came to you with problems that you had to go get some Democrats to help you get it through. And you've always come through doing the very best you can. I want to thank you, and for subjecting yourself to come out here. You know, if you don't want to be criticized, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. So I want to thank you for doing something.
Thank you, I appreciate that, thank you so much. Guys, I think, are you telling me I'm out of time? That's why they keep getting closer to the door. Let me just stop with this, guys. I do appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity. And I wake up every single morning and I say, love the people, love the call. In 2016, I was done with politics. I was fed up. I had it up to here. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but not everybody likes to wake up every single morning and say, I cannot wait till I get my first argument today. Right? And that's what happens in politics. And so it kind of taxes on you, it gets to you, right? And then I had to remind myself that, you know, I don't have to do this. This isn't my identity, it's not my livelihood, it's not anything. I chose to do this because I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so in 2016, I was ready to quit, I was done. I wasn't gonna run for re-election. And my wife and I actually took a little trip and we were out on a boat dock, just having our early morning devotion together. And as I was praying, I was like, Lord, I don't want to do this. I'm done. You know, I'm just done. And I had somebody tell me one time that said, wait, you can't just quit unless the Lord calls you to do something else. I mean, I've never been called to do something else unless the Lord's called me to do something else. You can't just stop what you're doing. I was like, oh, whatever. You know, that's smart. But then when I was sitting there praying about it, I was like, Lord, I don't want to miss your call. I pray every single morning, the Lord opens doors for me to go through and shut the doors that He doesn't. I mean, that's what I pray. And I miss the call. I miss it all the time, but I try my best. And all of a sudden, the Lord just put it on my heart, let the people know the call. And my wife was sitting over beside me, and I looked over at her, and she looked at me because that was the whole point of this trip. We just really want to seek the Lord, see where He wants us to go. And she says, we're running again, aren't we? I was like, didn't need confirmation that quick. And so ever since then, I say love the people, love the call, because it started reminding me, like it started rebuilding me. It started kind of putting my glass half full again. Because I'm not a bitter person at all. Actually, I love to have a good time. That's why I joke so much when I'm in this stuff. I believe in laughing. I get sometimes dark humor, because you learn being in some places I've been that dark humor sometimes is the best, but sometimes it's what you got. But I say that because I truly do thank you for giving me this opportunity. We may not agree on every issue, and I'm not gonna be perfect. Don't expect me to be perfect. But I'm always gonna give you my best. You're always gonna know where I'm at, and I'm always gonna try to be accountable to you. Because it's a service, and I truly, 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 truly thank you guys for giving me this opportunity. It's so humbling that a kid from Westville, Oklahoma gets to do this. I mean, there's no royalty in my bloodline. You know, that's what's great about the United States. I've traveled all over the world, and there's not another place I'd rather live. That's why we have an immigration problem coming into the United States, not people leaving the United States. So as frustrated as we get, as upset as we get with what's happening, we all agree that things could be better. Don't disagree with that. But I also don't agree with people that sometimes say that we're too far gone. Because no one's gonna tell me we're gonna fail. I don't believe in failing. Lose is not an option. But that doesn't mean we gotta fight. That doesn't mean we gotta work hard. That does mean we got a lot of work to do. And it's not gonna be fixed overnight, like I know some people want it done, but it's not gonna be done that way. But every day we get up, and we continue not to give up, and continue to think we can do better, then we will do better. And I'll tell you that I don't take that for granted. And so, truly I pray for y'all. Every time I say love the people, love the call, I'm praying for you. But at the same time, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be in the fight for y'all. And thank you for letting me be part of the fight, because there's no place I'd rather be. Right? And my wife probably thanks you too, because I'm gone a lot. So she don't have to. So, may God bless you, and as always, may God bless you.